So I finally just finished Ironheart. I was away on vacation for the past week, so I didn't get a chance to really sit down and watch it. So I finished the last 3 episodes today. And I gotta tell you, I think I might have been being a bit unfair to this show. But EG, I thought you said you hated Ironheart. Yeah, shut up. The first 3 episodes were pretty bad, and I didn't think that Marvel would be able to really save this show, but I was pretty wrong. I think the last 3 episodes is where this show really comes into its own. And make sure you stick around to the end because I have a special guest that's gonna be coming on and giving his take on Ironheart as well. So I will see you guys in just a minute. Let's talk about Ironheart. So if you follow my channel, you know that I haven't exactly been the most positive person around the show Ironheart. I think that Blade would have been a much better character to go with to introduce the mystic side of the MCU, and part of me still agrees with that. I think that Blade is just a much superior character. If you really are all about diversity, why not just go with Blade? It's a character everybody knows, it's a character everybody likes. But I'm also man enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I will say that the last 3 episodes of Ironheart were actually pretty damn good. So before we get started, I just wanted you guys to know the heavy spoilers ahead. So if you have not seen Ironheart, please do not take the comments and be like, you spoiled it for me, EG. I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna spoil shit, all right? So after the first 3 episodes, I will admit, I tend to agree with what a lot of people have said about Riri Williams being what seemed to be on some type of villain arc. She's constantly complaining about how the only thing stopping her is her ability to have money, so she ends up making a lot of bad choices, including joining a gang that has bad news written all over them. It's pretty clear that the show is going for a Tony Stark-esque origin story for Riri Williams. You know, when Tony Stark started, he was really into selling weapons to make money, and he didn't really care who they ended up with. He always thought he was selling them to the US military.
That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
But when he found out he was selling them to terrorists, you know, he was kind of just like, well, crap, I probably shouldn't do that. And it kind of forced Tony Stark to wake up and realize, I probably should be a little more careful who's ending up with my weapons because they very well may kill me or other innocent people around me. It ended up turning out, though, that it wasn't Tony Stark who was the one selling these weapons to terrorists. It was actually Ezekiel Stain, who we'll actually circle back to later on in the story. I think it's important to remember that this show was supposed to come out around 4 years ago. At least it started production 4 years ago, and they just kind of shelved it for a while. And Disney isn't super proud of the show because they hardly did any publicity for it. And the little publicity they did for it came off very cringy, kind of rubbed people the wrong way. Having RDJ call Riri Williams, the actress that played her, to kind of like almost pass the mantle just came off very odd and very kind of forced in my opinion. And I think that these things are what kind of rubbed people the wrong way when it came to this character. Not to mention, the Ironheart comic came out in 2016. It flopped big time. Many people, including myself, wonder why they even greenlit this show in the first place. They're not doing a whole lot to beat the whole MCU allegations. Let's just be realistic about that. Another reason why I think they should have just dumped Blade instead. So before I get deep into why I really liked what they did with this show in the second 3 episodes, let's start with the things I didn't like. And there was primarily a lot of things that happened in the first 3 episodes. And I think a good place to start would be with Riri herself. In the first 3 episodes, Riri comes off incredibly unlikable. She's as if Rachel Zegler just got dropped into the MCU. Someone who thinks that she's better than everyone else.
Weird.
She's too good for a 9-to-5 job, which I gotta say, you know, bold strategy insulting working class people, but still somehow expecting us to love this character at some point during the show. I'm too good for a 9-to-5 job. I don't need no benefits. 401k, that's for chumps, bitches. Oh, I love that Riri. She is just so badass and rebellious. It's giving entitlement. So it was like little things like that in the first 3 episodes that had most people not really enjoying Riri. Also, that whole, murder thing that we just are gonna act like never even happened. Last time I checked, even if you weren't the person who pulled the gun, you were still guilty by association if someone's death was caused by something you did. But yeah, you know what? She's got an iron suit, so we're just gonna let it go. Another thing I really didn't like about this show was you get a comedian like Eric Andre, who's pretty popular in internet culture, and you end up killing him right away. This could have been Eric Andre's idea for all I know. He could have been like, yeah, get me in the show, get everybody really excited to see me be a part of this show, and then just kill me instantly. That's totally something I could see him doing. Or he walked in and was like, I do not want anything to do with this show. Please kill me as fast as possible. But my paycheck's gonna be the same as everyone else's, right? I just want to make sure that's clear. So I'll only be on screen for like 3 minutes, but I still get paid as much as like the main character, right? All right, perfect. Speaking of Eric Andre, let's talk about the Hoods gang. I cannot stand these guys. This is like the island of misfits toys if they were in a heist movie. You have the Blood Brothers, who are actually the Blood Sisters. Then you have Slug, who clearly is showing off their first time acting skills. But then you have Clown. Now, I'll say Clown is probably one of the only characters of the group that I kind of like. She's whimsical, funny, just psychotic enough to make it interesting. And then you have the Hood's right-hand man, who has the personality of a brick. There's also this weird thing after the Hood's right-hand man ends up dying at the hands of Riri by not saving him. They keep hinting that he's like some guy that's more important than he actually should be by continuously playing this clip where this guy's like, I'm always real close by if you ever need anything. And I thought this was gonna lead to this guy actually being like Mephisto the whole time, but they never actually ended up paying it off at all. At least from what I saw. Maybe there was a post-credit scene that I missed, but I didn't see them pay off that line whatsoever. I guess it was supposed to hint at his love of friendship that he had with the Hood during this whole entire exchange, but for me, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen that pay off to mean something, because they kept showing the clip again and again and again, and it just led to nothing. Also, in the first 3 episodes, Riri just has this habit of making bad decision after bad decision, and again, I think it's important to remember that I think the reason that Riri has made all these bad choices is just because, you know, she was kicked out of MIT, she had a dead friend, even though in Wakanda Forever she never mentions her dead friend. But I guess it would be weird if you're fighting Namor and you're like, by the way, guys, I need you all to stop for a second. I had a friend once who died. Shuri would be like, now's not the time. We're fighting Namor. Get it together. So I guess it makes sense why she wouldn't actually say that in Wakanda Forever. But I do think it gives her character depth. And it also kind of explains a little bit of why Riri might feel like she's been screwed over so much in life. Not just because she's a black queen, which she has on her door, but because, you know, she grew up in an area that had situations like that happen all the time, and innocent people would die. So enough of the first 2 episodes, let's get to the good stuff, the second 3 episodes. So the 3rd episode ends off with Riri letting the Hood's best friend die, which all of a sudden makes her incredibly paranoid, and Riri just has guilt written all over her face. I don't know if the director was like, look guilty as hell, Riri, and that's what she did, because she has this look on her face at the beginning of the 4th episode when the Hood's talking about his dead friend that is screaming, I had something to do with it. And she does nothing to hide this whatsoever. Riri is an absolutely terrible liar. Like, probably the worst liar in any movie I've ever seen. So obviously, this kind of alerts the Hood to realize that Riri probably isn't being 100% honest, which she's not, because she did cut a piece of his cloak off and now she's got it under a microscope, and she's realizing that there's things going on with this cloak that don't really seem scientific. This is where the whole magic aspect of this show comes in, and I think the fact that they introduced magic into the show is probably what saves it. It just so happens that Riri's mom has a friend who has a daughter that is a former sorcerer. They were staying at Camartage or something like that. Probably good thing they left, because they would have probably been killed by the Scarlet Witch during Multiverse of Madness. So I guess the mom was right to get her out of Camartage. So now Riri's mom's friend's daughter, I think I got that right, is studying sorcery on her own by just reading old books. And she's kind of managed to become a pretty decent sorceress or witch. What is the difference between a witch and a sorceress? Are they the same? I guess so. Is like the witch just a female version of a sorcerer? So many questions. So anyway, Riri's new friend ends up telling her that whatever she's messing with is not of this realm, and this is our first inkling that there are darker forces at play here. And we come to find out that those darker forces are actually Mephisto. Yes, finally. Everybody thought he was coming in at WandaVision. Only took 6 years later, and we finally get Mephisto in the MCU, played impeccably by Sacha Baron Cohen. I applaud Disney for hiring him for this role. He could not have been a more perfect pick. Unfortunately, with shows like these, you could pretty much just easily guess how the show's gonna end, and I knew what was gonna happen in the show well before the show even finished. But I don't think that took away some special moments in the show. Like, there's this moment where Riri's getting a flashback to when she was hanging out with her dad in the shop, and her dad was like the most adorable man, and as a father to a daughter, it brought a tear to my eye, because I kind of treat my daughter the same way that he treated Riri, and him not being around anymore, I think has a massive influence on Riri and a lot of decisions that she makes in life. So I felt that part was really, really touching to me, and her mom stepping up and her friend stepping up to help her in her time of need, I think were all very touching moments in the show that really just kind of made for a feel-good moment. Now, one thing that did bother me though about this show is that Riri keeps claiming that she has nothing, yet all of a sudden we find out that her dad has this really nice garage in the city that is perfect for her to work on and build her suit. That's more than most of us have complained the whole first 3 episodes that she doesn't have any money. Yet she has a whole shop full of tools at her disposal to help her build whatever she wants. So yeah, she's got more than most of us. They got a home, they got a whole garage business. Riri's family's doing better than most Americans. Can I just say that? Not only that, but it turns out that Riri's dad left her like this gorgeous car that Riri decides that she's gonna use that to build her next suit. So if this whole time all she needed was a car to build a suit, couldn't she have just bought like a used car and then turned that into a suit? I don't know, certain things like that kind of threw me for a loop with the show, but you know, it's Marvel, so you just gotta go with it, I guess. We also find out that the Hood, to nobody's surprise, made a deal with Mephisto, which is where he got his hood from, and gave him all this power, and he made a deal that he wanted to be like this powerful creature, and he slowly descends into madness due to this hood. But again, Sacha Baron Cohen's portrayal of Mephisto is just chef's kiss. Could not have picked a better actor to play Mephisto than Sacha Baron Cohen. Also, Riri's second suit that she made from her dad's car is a million times better looking than the original suit that she made. I think the new suit looks really good. I'll give credit where credit's due. I love the colors of the suit. I think the suit looks a lot more sleeker. Again, though, if she knew she had this car this whole time, though, why didn't she just build the suit with that in the first place instead of stealing the stuff that she got from MIT? It's like every time this show takes 2 steps forward, it takes 1 step back. I did really love the family dynamic that played out between Riri, Natalie, Natalie's brother, Riri's mom, even the random kid that shows up to help them build the suit. I think that that was a really nice touch and was a welcome change of pace for the show. And then, you know, they introduced magic to Riri's suit, which they don't explain how it even works. They just go, magic, your suit's now magic, but I'm gonna take your AI friend though now because your suit's got magic. They don't explain how any of that works. They just say, magic, you need something for it to work, and that's it, and congrats. So some of the writing is still really lazy, but the overall arcing story isn't bad. I think, again, there's touching moments, especially after Riri defeats the Hood, takes his hood from him. She sits down with Mephisto and then makes a deal with the guy. I will admit, I did not see this coming. I thought that Riri would have been like, well, I know what happens when I sit down and I make deals with these people. I should learn a lesson from it. Not Riri. Riri's like, yeah, I'll make a deal with Mephisto. It's gonna get my friend back? Hell yeah, I'm in. I did not see that coming. I thought Riri was gonna go tell Mephisto to kick rocks, but she actually takes a deal with the guy. At least that's what you're expected to think. So now her friend Natalie is back from the dead. So that leaves me wondering what's gonna happen next for Riri. I guess you could say I'm a bit invested in what's gonna happen with this character moving forward. Now that she's wrapped up with Mephisto, I think that's gonna lead to some very interesting stories down the road. Now I want to talk about the character of Ezekiel Stain. Remember earlier how I said that Obadiah Stane we would circle back to? Well, it turns out that Obadiah's portrayal of Tony Stark was actually kind of put under wraps, and nobody actually knows that Obadiah turned on Tony and tried to kill him. So Ezekiel knows what actually happened, and he has to constantly live with the fact that nobody knows what actually happened with his dad and Tony Stark. And you could tell that kind of eats at him. So I think that his character arc out of everybody's is probably the most compelling. He's a character that I actually am truly invested in because Ezekiel's not like this totally bad person, but he's constantly being portrayed by people, let down by people in his life. And I think that that's what kind of led him to being in the situation that he was in. And it also turns out that the Hood gave him this upgrade, I guess. They don't really explain how it worked. All of a sudden, he's just got millions of dollars of weapons in him or something, and he could shoot lightning now, and they don't really explain any of it, so we're kind of just left with, okay, I guess he can do that now. But it turns out that the Hood actually kind of like put a hack in him and overrode him, and then Riri figures it out later. I don't know, it's a whole big thing, but I am kind of interested to see what happens with Ezekiel Stain's character moving forward. I think the best way that I could describe Ironheart is it's a show that takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back the whole time. But even if you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, you're still making progress. And I think that this show, there was an amazing show in here somewhere, and it just fell a little bit short. For me, I enjoyed watching it. I thought that the characters were fun. They were refreshing. I love the interactions between all the different characters. I love the crossover between the tech side of MCU and the magic side of the MCU. I love the family dynamic. I love that Riri, no matter what, just seems to continuously make the wrong decisions for herself and her life and just never learns from it. I think that that's refreshing, personally. I don't always want to see a happy ending, and I don't think we got a happy ending here because the Hood's still alive. He's out there running around somewhere. Mephisto now owns Riri's soul in exchange for her friend Natalie being alive again. I think that this is going to be very interesting to see what develops with these characters in the MCU moving forward. forward. I don't know. I'm sorry if you disagree with me. That's just the way I feel. I'm just sharing my perspective with it. I didn't like the first 3 episodes like most of you guys, unless you did, in which case, you know, go for it. But for me, the last 3 episodes were really good. I actually really liked them. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that I like this series. I was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't always just jump to conclusions. I learned a valuable lesson in this. I still hold firm that Blade would have been a better character going forward to use. I don't know. I'm just some guy on YouTube. But instead, I think that it would be much better to hear from someone who knows comics way better. So that's why I got my friend Swim Reads Comics from his channel, Swim Reads Comics, to give his perspective on what he thought of this show.
I really hate that Ironheart got wrapped up in all this culture war bullshit. Like, you have all these people trying to say that the show is as bad as Secret Invasion or the Marvels, but it's just not. So a little bit of context here. The Ironheart comics suck. They do suck, period, point blank. And so do the original Miles Morales comics by Brian Michael Bendis. Bendis wrote my favorite Spider-Man run, Ultimate Spider-Man. That was my Spider-Man when I was a kid. It was one of the first comics I ever read. And after his success with Spider-Man, Bendis and his wife adopted 2 kids. The 2 kids he adopted were from different races, and he felt kind of frustrated that his kids didn't have heroes that looked like them. So that was the idea behind the conception of Miles Morales, and to an extent also Riri. The only problem I have with that is that he killed off the original Ultimate Peter to replace him with Miles. I think that was a huge overcorrection. I think the 2 characters should have coexisted like they do in the Insomniac games, but that's neither here nor there. Like I said before, the original Miles comics kind of suck ass. But after the Spider-Verse movies and after the Insomniac games, Miles kind of got a brand new personality and a second chance at life. So all the writers after Bendis, they all just kind of ignore what he did and wrote the character from the movie instead. So in the modern day, there are good Miles books, and I like Miles in the movies and the games. I'm just saying the original comics by the white dude who made him kind of suck. And I know this is kind of complicated and it's a nuanced topic, but I think anytime you have a comic about the black experience written through a white person's lens, it comes across as inauthentic even if you have good intentions. So the same problems with Miles are the same problems with Riri and the original Ironheart comics. They're misguided by good intentions. Riri and Ironheart also being written by Brian Michael Bendis. So Riri was an attempt to make Lightning Strike twice and repeat what worked for Miles and Spider-Man, but with Riri and Iron Man. And then it completely flopped. Miles got a version 2.0 with the movies, and that kind of fixed his character in the comic books, but that never happened for Riri. At least, it never happened until this show dropped. And I think the show got a really bad rap for 2 reasons. One, just because the MCU is kind of at a low point right now.
Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point.
And 2, just because of all the culture war bullshit going on in the modern day. So again, a little bit of perspective here. I really like superhero shows. And there's a difference between superhero slop and then the shows that are actually worth watching. Like, I sat through all the CW shows like Flash and Arrow and Supergirl. I sat through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like Secret Invasion and Miss Marvel, even if I love Miss Marvel, both those projects are still slop. In the worlds of the DC and Marvel universes, the slop is background noise. It's not important. But Ironheart manages to be way better than all the CW DC shows or even most of the Disney Plus shows. If I had to rank them, I'd say Ironheart is better than Miss Marvel or Secret Invasion, but it's not as good as Loki or WandaVision. Like, it's mid, but it's high-grade mid. Like, it's on par with Luke Cage, but not Luke Cage Season 1. It's on par with Luke Cage Season 2. But that brings me to another point. This is a show that's for a different target demographic than most of the other Marvel stuff. Like, when you see Black Panther, you see Luke Cage, those are way different stories than how they handle Daredevil or Captain America. And that's how this show is too. Like, if Miss Marvel is supposed to be the Disney Channel Hannah Montana of the Marvel Universe, then Ironheart is supposed to be the Pretty Little Liars on ABC Family of the Marvel Universe. What I'm saying is that the show's not going to appeal to everyone, but for the people it is intended for, I think it's going to be a cult classic and a big hit. The show starts off kind of rough, but the twist at the end of the first episode is what really defines the show to me. So part of Riri's tragic origin story is that her stepdad and best friend got killed because of gun violence, and then a few years later, Riri accidentally pulls a WandaVision and creates an AI version of her dead best friend while she's sleeping. And that Ghost in the Machine twist is really at the heart of this show to me. And I love the dynamic between Natalie and Riri. It's great. The stuff I didn't like was like the heist stuff. The whole youth gets in over their head with organized crime. That angle is definitely by the numbers. And the entire gang of criminals is kind of basic, but Anthony Ramos kills it as the Hood. He is a fantastic antagonist. He's so good. I loved him in this show. Like, I really liked him in that new Transformers movie. He was great there, and he's great here too. I really hope we see more of him in the future. He's a great actor. He's great as the Hood. I really hope we see more of him in the future. Zelma was another character who immediately shined the second she stepped on screen. All the same things I loved about Sabrina from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina are the same things I love about Zelma. In the comics, she's Doctor Strange's apprentice, and I'm pretty sure she's a part of the Strange Academy books too, so there's probably something lined up for her in the future, either with the Young Avengers, the Champions, or some Doctor Strange thing. But really though, Riri's entire family and her entire side cast, her mom, Natalie, they're all great. This was the first time in a long time that I cared more about a character's character arc than I cared about whatever MacGuffin or Gulp Shido was going to show up next, which is ironic ironic because, spoiler alert, but the Gulp Shido of all Gulp Shidos is the twist villain for the finale.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Swim. Glub Shido Mephisto, ladies and gentlemen. That's going on a shirt one day. Mark my words. If you guys enjoyed that and you want to see more of Swim, go check out his channel. There'll be a link in the description below. Also, don't forget to go check out my second channel, EG Lately Live, where sometimes Swim pops on there and we talk comics. There's a great back and forth that we had about the current state of Marvel. So if that's something you're into, check out EG Lately Live. And with that said, I mean, I guess what more is there to say about this? See you guys on the next one. Peace.